Hello everybody, my name is Lucas, aka the Frozen Controller. I'm getting better at that. Today, I was going to make a video talking about Jace and how it's been unbanned, and how that it was a horrible decision. Today I thought I'd stay more on the positive side of things, and do a sort of budget tier deck list for anyone who might want to get into Modern and have a chance of winning if they run into the probably hundreds of decks that now run Jace that didn't before. Today I'm basically going to be talking about how to build Storm on a budget, because I did that. Because I'm not going to lie, it's mostly in the lands, but this is still just a really solid Storm list, even with or without the lands. So I'm just going to start with by quickly going over what lands I ended up with. 4 mountains and 7 islands. Now, if you have access to fetches and shock lands and that kind of thing, move the mountains first. Maybe leave at most 1 mountain in. But if you're going to be building a fully teched out Storm list, you're going to be running Blood Moons in the sideboard, which means your basic mountains will be basically useless if you play it. And then, yeah, you definitely run more than 11 lands. As it stands, I have 3 Shivering Reefs, play a set of Swiftwater Cliffs. Well, Shivering Reef does see play in Tier 1 Storm decks, so those are good, and they're pretty cheap. I know these are like $1 a piece. Swiftwater Cliffs is just, it's not a good dual land. I mean, unless you're building on a budget or playing Pauper. Now, would I switch these out for better dual lands as soon as humanly possible? Oh yes, definitely. No question. I'm just saying, if you have to play these, they're not the end of the world. That little bit of life gain can pull some wonders. Unless you're playing against Burn. But if you're playing against Burn, no matter what Storm list you're running, you're screwed. I'm just going to say that. Burn screws Storm. Well, if it's running Eidolon. If it's not running Eidolon, well, you're kind of just not playing against a very good Burn deck, if I'm being completely honest with my thoughts here. So let's start by getting into cantrips. How many cantrips? 10 cantrips, to be exact. Play a set of Serum Visions, play a set of Opt, 2 Thought Scours. If you're playing a more expensive version of the deck, I'll just say that. Take out the Thought Scours, replace them with like a Merchant Scroll or something. Always play a cantrip on turn 1, if you can. Your turn 2 play will most likely be one of these, Electromancer or Brawl. This is just to make it extremely easy to combo out, and can allow you to kill your opponent on turn 3 or 4. I only run 3 Brawl because it's legendary. I know a lot of people choose to run the full 4 of Brawl and only run 2 or 3 Electromancer. For one, if you're playing on a budget, you definitely don't want to do that. But just in general, running a 4 of a legendary creature is very aggressive. And I choose to run the 4 of Electromancer just because then if I draw more, it's not a dead draw. Also, for budget reasons, Remand isn't in this list, so the secondary ability on Brawl is kind of moot. Speaking of Remand, let's get into utility spells. Disperse, because there's those people that play main board ley lines, and if you're playing the budget list, which might be a little slower than the normal, definitely want a way to bounce those pre-board. Post-board ley line isn't really a problem. 3, unsubstantiate, just a budget replacement for remand. Also gets around things like abrupt decay, which can't be countered, which is very nice. I've actually seen a lot of tier 1 storm lists starting to play unsubstantiate as like a 1 or 2 of, replacing like a remand or something, which is pretty good. Like, people seeing the value of a good card is always nice to see. 3, gifts ungiven. This was mostly because I couldn't get a 4th, but it also takes like $10 off the budget of the deck, which is nice when you're building for budget reasons. And 2, Past in Flames. Don't make the mistake I've seen people make where they only play 1 Past in Flames. That's how you lose Storm games. Always run 2. You shouldn't run more than that, though. It kind of gets redundant after 2 copies. Then let's go to the next part. So you've done some drawing, you've played your gifts ungiven, and you're ready to combo off. But what do you combo off with? You probably know by now, but I'm just going to keep doing this tutorial because I feel like it. 4 Desperate Ritual, 4 Pyretic Ritual, 4 Manamorphose. These, unfortunately, are pretty decently expensive. I think like $1.50 to $2 per ritual, and between $4 and $5 for Manamorphose. Last I checked. These may not be current prices anymore. I built the deck like 3-4 months ago. Yeah. These are just good for just you get a ton of mana in your mana pool, cast a bunch of spells, then you get your storm count at around 20, and you cast the win condition, which is Empty the Warrens. Also 3 Grape Shot. But mainboard leyline you always want, since mainboard leyline is a thing in some decks, you always want your Empty the Warrens to be mainboard. Then you can run 2 to 3 Grape Shot mainboard as well. Just because you want to have as good of a chance as you can to win the game in game 1. Empty the Warrens and Disperse mainboard help you do that. Now, sideboard. If you're playing around with heavy amounts of graveyard hate, like, I know, Scavenging Ooze, Rest in Peace, Relics, like a Tron deck, or Jund, or I play like a Teamer mid-range type deck that runs 3 Scavenging Ooze mainboard, and can beat Storm pretty handily. So, this is where Pieces of the Puzzle comes in. Allows you to play through Graveyard Hate really well, just by casting it and fetching cards into your hand. At least I'm pretty sure that's the intended purpose. I have only brought these in once. I mean, it worked beautifully, and I did like Grape Shot for 40, but yeah, it's not something you use a lot, but yeah, great card. Really great card. 2 Anger of the Gods. Just clear the board. Very good against like elves or goblins. Yeah, this just wins you games. And if you know you're playing against a deck like elves or goblins, maybe hold off on playing your Electromancers or Brawls until you clear the board with an Anger. And even then, you can still cast an Electromancer or a Brawl and just combo off and win from there. 2 Echoing Truth. Just the answer for everything that you put in your sideboard. The only way that I've known to be truly safe from Echoing Truth in a post-board Storm game is Nevermore naming Echoing Truth. Chances of people doing that is extremely low because no one plays Nevermore except those people who build and play janky mono-white control decks. 2 to 3 of Spell Pierce. I personally run 2. But with the recent reprinting of Spell Pierce, it's gone down to like 20 cents. So you can run up to 4 pretty safely. I just choose 2 because that's what fit in the sideboard the best. Then the last, like, pretty common in sideboard piece, like none of this is really out there. 3 of a removal spell that you have, pretty much any 1 mana red removal spell will do. Galvanic Bombardment is nice, just because if you draw multiple, then they just get stronger. But Lightning Bolt is probably the best. Unfortunately, Lightning Bolt's sitting at about $3 a piece, so. But since I think most people who would play Modern at this point have, or either have Lightning Bolts or have a way to get their hand on Lightning Bolts. So, yeah. You can play either of these, no problem. Now, Storm doesn't usually play Graveyard Hate. However, I'm running 1 copy of Silent Gravestone because Surgical Extraction is a huge, huge thing that can just shut the deck down. This also shuts down Reanimator or Graveyard-based strategies. Well, except for like Dredge. It doesn't really do a ton against Dredge, but at the same time, like this I'd actually play in Dredge, but you can't actually play Grafdigger's Cage in Storm. This is the next best thing, and it just stops people from surgicling your combo pieces. This was just because I got sick and tired of Aether Vial, Oldex. I would not recommend running Damping Matrix. It's kind of almost a meme for me at this point to have this in this deck. Mainly because when I first got the card, I was really tired and didn't see that it doesn't affect mana abilities. Yeah. I do have one more quite janky thing that can be thrown into a Storm deck, which I'll be back with momentarily. So let's say you decided that this week you didn't want to play a super hyper competitive Storm deck, and also your opponent surgicaled you Grape Shot and somehow didn't notice this. Burning Vengeance. Despite the set symbol being Eternal Masters on this copy, it is Modern legal. And I haven't done any testing with this card. Just thought I'd bring it up, because if you can Past in Flames with a bunch of spells in your graveyard, you could just kill them with Burning Vengeance easily. So I think at some point, in the next couple months, I'm going to start recording actual Magic gameplay. You just kind of need to set that up. But once it's set up, all will be well. I might play Storm, I might not. Depends on what people feel like watching, really. I think this deck is a pretty good option for a budget Modern deck right now. Especially since Storm kind of flunked the last few GPs and the Pro Tour. So people are probably going to be steering away for it, which makes it, which probably makes the cards for it pretty cheap. Specifically Gifts Ungiven. Although I think Storm is just something that will always exist, which I'm perfectly fine with. I don't have a problem playing through it. Now Jace, I have a problem with Jace. But Storm is like 15 cards that win the game when put together. Jace is 1 card that just wins the game on its own. One thing that is very much worth noting is just a couple of last minute things. these are really the piles that you should look for when you're playing Storm. If you resolve a Gifts Ungiven, then just find one of these two piles, depending on if you have a Past in Flames in your hand or graveyard already, then you might want to go for this one, which big difference is Grape Shot instead of Past in Flames. That's really the only difference. But if you're playing against Storm, and your opponent resolves a Gifts Ungiven with 4 mana left over, then even if you give them, or with 3 mana left over, even if you give them this, they're still, if they have a cost reduction effect, they're still going to be able to cast Past in Flames. And then they even get an extra use out of it. But if you give them these, then you just guarantee they'll be able to cast Past in Flames. Basically speaking, if your opponent playing Storm gets a Gifts Ungiven off and has enough mana floating that they could cast Past in Flames with mana left either way, yeah, unless they just kind of, at that point you're basically just hoping they fizzle out. And for the Storm player, if you end up with a Grape Shot in your hand, along with an Unsubstantiate, you can cast Grape Shot, Unsubstantiate back to your hand, you're good to go. Anyway, camera's dying, and I'm about out of stuff to talk about in this video anyway. So, I still don't have an outro. I guess like if you enjoy it or something? I don't know. That feels cheesy. Bye.